Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back for another positive talk. It's been a while. I think my last one was in August. So super excited to be going live again today with all of you. Hopefully you all have been having a good week. It's Friday. We made it through another week. Hopefully you all have been enjoying the holiday season of spooky Halloween season, whatever you want to call it. I've followed her for a while and I love her content and I just wanted to have her on for a conversation. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I am doing well. The weather is perfect right now, so I'm happy.
Where are you located?
I'm here in Richmond, Virginia. What about you?
Oh, nice. Okay, North Texas.
Okay. So is it cooling down there a little bit?
Yeah, it is. It's actually pretty nice.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I will let you introduce yourself so people know who you are, and then we can dive into a conversation.
Cool. Hi, my name is Ariel, and I'm a deconstruction coach. I help those who want to expand spirituality, heal from religious trauma, and I've been on this journey for the healing journey for about 8.5 to 9 years, and the actual deconstruction journey for about 4 to 5 years. Um, Other than that, I love to read and learn and do yoga and spend time with my kid and be outside.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw that you posted about the library, and I was just like, oh, we have something in common because a good, beautiful library just like makes me melt.
Me too. Even if I read a book on Audible, I go try to find it at half book price because I want a library someday, like you said you did. And I'm always collecting everything I've read. I want a
Yeah,
library.
I've moved so many times, and books have always been like the heaviest, worst part about the moves. And every time I'm like, I have this on Audible. Should I get rid of the book? And I'm like, no, my library needs it in the future.
Yes. Yeah. My daughter's like, "Do you collect anything?" And I was like, "No, definitely not." And I was like, "Oh, my books." Like that would be one thing I would I would be
Most
sad if
definitely.
I lost. Yeah.
Well, I absolutely love the content that you create, and I would love to hear a little bit more about what started this journey of wanting to kind of deconstruct and figure out your relationship with spirituality in a different way. Because I myself was brought up with a very strong Christian upbringing, and I think as a gay male, I had to go through my own journey of deconstructing and building a new relationship with faith and spirituality. And as I've met more people in the realm of coaching, I realized that there's a lot of different methods that people have taken, and some may work for others, where some may not work as well. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about the journey you took to kind of get where you are today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. Um, so I didn't mean to start this journey. I started yoga for new mom back pain and uh, very quickly realized that if I did it that day, my day was 10 times better. And I could really have more the patience that I needed to be a gracious mother in this new role that I was adapting to. And then I was working on my master's degree in human resources and simultaneously got the chance to be in my first yoga teacher training to be a certified yoga teacher. And I didn't even really want to be a yoga teacher, but I wanted to learn all the ins and outs of yoga, just for my own personal practice. And that's when things really started to shift because I realized that in healing, I had to really look at everything that ever happened to you and to shift. But even though you can heal through yoga without looking at it directly, but um I was so trying to bring the two concepts together. I wanted to know how you could have biblical beliefs and also simultaneously have these somatic healing practices and have them the science go with what the Bible is teaching. And I just kept finding that they were clashing and I couldn't have both of them at the same time. So in order to even attempt to prove it to myself, I started really studying anatomy to find out what makes people behave a certain way and what trauma does to the body, and then how it manifests in behavior and choices. And in that, I proved to myself what I needed to know to kind of shift out of that belief system, but I didn't have um, the safety, the security within my body to say it out loud or even really put my Bible away. Like I was still too scared to put it away, right? And so I found a teacher, or my friend suggested a teacher that actually taught clairvoyance, mediumship, and remote viewing, and she has a PhD in psychology. So since she had the groundedness of an education, I really leaned towards that, and then I dove in so that I could attempt to heal my fear of demons and Satan and hell in case I was wrong, you know. And in that, I found that the spirit world and mediumship and all the things that are possible that Christianity says are not possible or that they're demonic were the most beautiful experiences I've ever had in my life. And they were the most healing. And they brought me out on the other side of two miscarriages, and I've lost many friends to death, to drugs and suicide, and it helps me heal through all of that. Um, I found it to be the most supportive practices that I had ever found. So I continued studying energy work and anatomy, and just trying to bring it all together to support, so I can verbalize it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. I love that. And I feel my journey was very similar in the fact that the stuff that I collided with in the Christian religion was really hard for me to like understand. And it took me running into different people who were not uh, calling themselves Christian and start to see a difference in the way that other people were living, because it was very like rigid in the Christian faith, and I was very stuck in my beliefs. And there are a lot of people that I judged really harshly because they didn't live the way that God told them to live.
Hmm.
And it took me being assigned a partner in an English class in high school who was like very goth and very different to sit there and be in a space with her where she was probably the kindest person I ever met. And I sat there and I was like, wow, like we've sat here and she's been curious about me and she's told me about her life and she's opened up about flaws and she made me feel comfortable being imperfect. And I think that kind of started my journey of like, what does it feel like to live a life where every moment I don't feel like I'm doing something that's going to like send me to hell? And it
Yeah.
was like that fear was just like constant in my life because there were so many things that I grew up with where I was just hearing it echoing in my head. And just like going through my life experiences, I've realized the more I let go of my beliefs in that regard, the more like safe I felt in the world and the more I felt like I could heal and help other people heal.
Hmm.
But religion as a whole, for most of the core religions, they have a lot of things in place to kind of keep you in that mindset and scare you away from exploring anything outside of that mindset. And I've just found that when I broke free from that, I moved several states away from family. When I came out, I got kicked out of my church. So that kind of opened the door to where it's like, okay, if I'm not welcome, like, where can I find like community? Where can I find myself? And that kind of started my journey where I was like, okay. And the more I found other pieces, I found comfort, I found healing in other places. And hearing what other people would say that were still my friends, that were still regularly attending churches, they would hear what I was telling them and they're like, sin, the devil, no. And I was like, but you all, it doesn't have to feel the way that it felt for us, like growing up. You can expand past the walls of the church.
Hmm. Absolutely. And can I ask what church that was that you were raised in?
I
What
was
kind?
raised in a Baptist church.
Baptist?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's that's so hard. I, that just when your whole community comes at you for something so profoundly a piece of yourself. Um, I am I am bisexual, and I left my high school sweetheart for my first girlfriend, and that was one of the things that really messed me up too, because I thought that I was this horrendous sinner for like having to just go, holy crap, what's going on? I have to go look into this. I have to find out what is happening. Because it always been a piece of me, but I had compartmentalized it so good. I didn't have language for it. I'd been able to push it aside so easily that I could ignore it. And then it was in my face, and I had the opportunity, and I couldn't shut it down this time. And he eventually, about a year and a half after I broke up with him, he committed suicide. And so I got really, really sick. I lost like 50 pounds and developed allergies to all kinds of foods. I mean, like all the basic ingredients, like corn and wheat and dairy and eggs and scallops. And I think it was the guilt that I was associating with the Christianity of, because being raised Mormon, you're not allowed that either. And I thought his death was my fault. So that was another thing that when it was coming up for healing in the beginning of my yoga teacher training, I had to accept that that wasn't my fault, and that he wasn't in hell, and he was a good person, and even though that happened. And so I just, and I never had to deal with being kicked out because I left. So I
Yeah.
can't imagine the intensity for a young person just being, we called it excommunicated from your whole system, your whole support system.
Yeah. It's it's definitely a journey because there's like a longing to want it back because that's what you grew up knowing, but then like a longing for something better as well.
Mhm.
Um, I think my first relationship that I had with a guy, I was still so like tied into my religious beliefs that like no matter what happened that was wrong, I just assumed it was God telling me that I was doing something wrong by being in a gay relationship.
Mhm.
When my family, when I was younger, thought I might be gay and I was going through all the traumas of my childhood, they sent me to counseling, and their main focus was to save my soul from the devil. Whereas there were so many other things that we could have focused on that probably would have helped me heal a lot better.
Mhm.
But going through those things and kind of having religious friends, so when I was sharing this is what I'm going through, they affirmed, yes, it's the devil, it's God telling you this is wrong. So like you have to like compete past all of that and kind of say like this this life that you all are saying I need to live makes me feel horrible. But
Mhm.
then like also realizing as you grow through it, sometimes people swing the other way, like completely to the other side, whereas they're living a life that's hurting themselves to like be spiteful to the people that were hurting them over here. And as a coach, I've worked with a lot of people to try to get them to swing back to like this middle ground, because there's no need to like hurt yourself and cause yourself trauma to kind of prove something to the people over here that caused you trauma. Uh, it's okay to heal and not hurt other people to prove them wrong in a sense.
110%. Because as soon as I did that exact thing when I left and I was with my girlfriend, I had like working two jobs. I was in college full time, and I was modeling and singing, and I just quit all of it. Like I just swung all the off, like the whole, as far as you could go off the deep end because of the shame. And it was just associated with, you think I'm this horrible sinner, then I guess I'm going to be this horrible sinner, like.
Yeah.
And it took a while to come. I think motherhood is what was like, okay, I'll get it together.
Yeah.
But that pendulum, that's real.
Yeah. It's sad that there's like so much shame attached to the choices that people make in life. And I think that a lot of times if you don't go through the healing process or start it, we don't realize how many of our choices that we make are based out of shame or other traumas that exist in us because we haven't taken the time to like look at those parts of ourselves. And when I started, I went down some dark paths. And when I got to the end and I was just like, I still feel like crap, I started asking myself questions and I was uncovering more of how I was just choosing a life to like prove to them something. I wasn't living it for myself. I was living it for other people, and I was just like, why am I doing this? This isn't what I wanted to do. Like, why did I jump from their version of telling me what to do to a new version of showing them that I won't do anything that they told me to do? But it's a difficult road because where do you find yourself in that journey of other people telling you most of your young adult life, this is who you are, and then you're like, well, who am I? Who am I without you telling me that identity? And that's like a journey that even today, I would say I've been a coach for 8 years, but I came out when I was 18. I'm 36 now. So it's been a journey. And even now, there are things that will trigger me where I'm just like, ooh, that still needs some tendering and some help right there. So I'm constantly working through those traumas.
Oh yeah. I think it's an ever unraveling journey just because it was the core foundation of our neurological makeup, basically ages 0 to 8. And here we are being conditioned to believe that these certain things will absolutely hurt us physically and eternally in our salvation. And so to really dissect every single one of them in every action that we're going as we go about our life, there's so many, and it really does take a lot of grace and self-compassion and awareness. And I think that's why as coaches, but I was thinking about my own program, I'm sure you do the same thing. One of the first things you have to do is really build safety in the body so that the nervous system can be like, okay, I can kind of come with you over here and hear what you're saying so that you can then start to put in the new information.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because I do more career focused, I work in people's passion projects, but there's so many limiting beliefs that can be tied to an upbringing where you're kind of taught that the things you're feeling are not correct. Listen to what I'm telling you, we're right,
Mhm.
you're wrong. It kind of builds this like distrust in your own feelings, which I think is a really hard thing to overcome because life isn't easy. Life has challenges, and it's hard to kind of move through those challenges with belief that the choices you've made were the right choices when you've kind of been hit multiple times with your life will be horrible. You'll go to hell. All these bad things happen to you if you don't follow my rules. And I feel like a lot of people, when they start making those choices for themselves, it's really uncomfortable, but you have to kind of start that journey and start building comfort in your own like gut feelings and beliefs that this is what's right for me, this is what's meant for me.
Absolutely. And that's actually part of the cognitive damage that it starts in childhood with it. They really do remove self-agency by inflicting um, this this self-doubt, and like 'cause you can't trust your thoughts or your sensations, your bodies. You can't trust you can't trust people on the outside. You can't trust uh, basically anything other than what the person in charge of your church and authority and the Bible say. And it's actually an initiator for PTSD, because if you feel like you can't trust your body, you start to disconnect your awareness from your body. And once the mind and the body separate, because it's no longer a safe place for the awareness to arise, you're initiating PTSD. You're starting this whole cycle of probably CPTSD, because it's chronic, it's ongoing, it's nonstop. And then you get to your adulthood and you don't trust yourself, you don't trust others, you don't trust the decisions you're trying to make, you don't even know what you want, because if you couldn't listen to the music you liked, you get to an adult and you're like, what do I like this, or am I listening to it because I think it's safe? Am I listening to it because I think it's going to make me a good mom? Am I listening to it because I think it makes me look cool or wealthy? Like, we don't even know what kind of music we like until we're like, we've been able to shed these toxic fears and then start dabbling in things and trying it out, what we were supposed to be doing as teenagers if we felt safe enough to do so.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating journey.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because when it I think you made a video where you kind of talked about why young men are flocking to Christianity and why a lot of women uh, are not moving towards the religion. And it's almost like there's become this level of self-awareness in women that the things that the church are telling them aren't necessarily true. Whereas, like, the church is a lot more forgiving for white, straight men, where it's just like, it allows them to feel safe in their insecurities. It allows them to feel safe just in life in general. I had a conversation with a friend who he was like, I really love order. I don't like things when it's like chaotic or out of order. I love order. And I was like, well, for you being a straight white man, order's great because society was built for you. Like, it gave you the ultimate say so, and the rest of us just have to listen.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, I've found chaos a little bit more inviting for me because the order that's over here is telling me that who I am is not allowed. I can't exist. It's not allowed. But over here, I can destroy something and turn it into something that does fit me and who I am and my identity.
Mhm.
And it was just very interesting to hear someone so confidently say that they love things to be order. They want you to tell them step one, step two, step three. I was like, ooh, I don't know. I don't like that. And I think it's because for me, when I was being told what to do, it didn't sit with me. It didn't agree with who I was. So I wasn't being allowed to show up in my most authentic version of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me too of just what you were saying is how they're so comfortable in that organization and in that structure is because one of the main toxic things that it does for women and men alike is that men aren't held accountable for anything. I mean, so if they have a toxic thought, it's whoever's in front of them's fault, like whoever put the commercial, whoever put the half naked woman, whoever the woman is, it's their fault. It's not their own. It's very deflecting. So there's no personal growth inside there, and they put so much of their fulfilled purpose in getting a wife or many, whatever religion we're talking about, that they can't even take like separate and find wholeness within themselves as a soul being. And I don't even think that's just religion. I think it's patriarch, because I know people who are not even very religious, they're not even raised religiously, and they still think that a woman is going to fulfill every dream they've ever had, and that as soon as you're married to one, I think that's why so many marriages, people say they got married and then everything changed. I think there's like this expectation just all of a sudden changes from, you're this human being that we're going to be in a partnership, and then, oh, we're married now, I expect you to fulfill every inkling of, I'm not happy here, why am I not happy? It's kind of your job to fix this. And I mean, I'm sure there are relationships that go both ways, but in religion and patriarch, it really is like one woman, a pure woman will fulfill every dream you've ever had, and then they get there and it doesn't happen, and we're like, it's your fault, you're not you're not fulfilling me. Why not? They said you would.
Yeah. I mean, I being someone who can show up in those spaces where men are having those types of conversations and not be instantly flagged as, oh, you don't belong here. I've heard conversations that people have had, and like, I was brought up with my mother, my two sisters. Most of the like mentors in my life were women. So I had a different conversation around the people I grew up with. So when I got to school and was like hanging out with the guys, because the guys always got put on teams, the girls got put on teams. So the conversations that were being had confused me a lot because it's not the type of conversations that you hear when it comes to what women are talking about with guys. Because a lot of times women will talk about like, oh, it was so beautiful, the date, like he did something special, he remembered my favorite whatever it was. Whereas the conversations guys were having, it was very different. And something
Oh,
that
I
was
want
very
to wait.
interesting.
I gotta know. You gotta say what the
You
guys
want to
were
know?
saying. I was like,
So
you,
guys will talk more about like the physical attraction that they had, the things that women did that turned them on at the, like, oh, she put her hand on my lap and it got me so hard. Like, those are the types of conversations. And then I'm sitting there with their girlfriends and hearing this beautiful story. And I'm like, she painted it to be a little bit more like a fairy tale. You painted it like I'm about to watch like a triple X movie over here. And
oh
it just
wow.
like blew my mind that that's kind of like the conversations. But I have met a lot of people of the trans experience through my career, and something that's very interesting is when someone transitions to the other gender and gets to be in a space, if they're passing, be in a space where men will speak to them about women, and they never knew that that's how it happened. And then people who transition the other way will see how women are spoken to as if you are not up here with us, you are not quite at par with men. And to hear their side of the conversation and them sharing like, yeah, there's a noticeable difference. But it's hard for someone who's always been a man to understand what always being a woman feels like. But this person wrote a book, I think it's called something about bias, but they talked about being a scientist and being female, but they transitioned to male. And they used to think it was normal for everything they said about science to be questioned and never accepted at first. But then when they transitioned and presented, people instantly grasped their ideas. They instantly were like,
Wow.
yes, that's a great idea. And I was just like, we live in such a reality that it's hard for us to see that because it's ingrained in every little thing. You think of like the cartoons that are made for girls, the cartoons that are made for boys. Like we've got Transformers over here kicking butt, and then we've got My Little Pony over here talking about feelings and being kind to one another. Those languages are taught to us from a young age, and then we understand why we can't communicate, and it's like, well, that's not taught to us. We're not taught to communicate with one another. We're taught completely different languages, and then we're confused at when we're sitting there with the opposite partner, and it's like, oh, okay, now
Yeah,
figure it out.
that's fascinating. And it's I think that goes back to the like the culture that is so performative. Like where nobody's really in tuned with who they are because they're not really allowed to find out who they are. So when it comes down to presenting themselves to somebody, they're just hearing what they're not saying what you want to hear. You know, like I'm sure those guys didn't say any of those things to a female around.
Yeah.
And I do have a friend who transitioned, one of my close friends, and he says now that he's male, he Ubers, like he's an Uber driver sometimes, and that men will get in the car all the time and tell him confidently how he's going to cheat on his wife. Like he's got this hot, like hot thing waiting for him, and he says he cannot believe how they just disclose this information, and it's like there's not a shame. They're like bragging because they think he's, no, he doesn't have the perspective of a woman, and he just talks about how he's flabbergasted about the conversations that will go on in his backseat now.
Yeah. And the locker rooms, like, it's the same thing. Like, as soon as they go where they think a female's ear will not hear, the conversations being had about the women out in the gym, it's just like, come on, let's be a little bit more respectful in this space. But that's like the mentality where I've asked so many people, I'm like, how do you think that you can get someone that the world and society and everything says everything you are is perfect, to understand that no one else feels that way, like no one else is allowed to exist in that way? Because I talked to my friend that I talked about, like the chaos and order, and I was like, when you don't get a job, like what things pop in your head first? Because everyone that has any type of minority status that they can check, they're like, ooh, was it because I was gay? Like, could they tell? Was it because I was a female and I sounded too catty, or I was too aggressive and they took it the wrong way? Whereas a man was just, they'll be like, well, I guess there was a better candidate.
Yeah.
Or they're crazy, or they're stupid, they don't know what they're missing out on. Like, they don't deflate at all when they don't get what they want, and it's very interesting to kind of navigate
That's my
conversations with
gold
people.
mindset. I want to have that mindset someday. Like, wasn't me.
Yeah, it couldn't
Not
have
that
been
that
me, I'm
problem.
perfect.
Oh my goodness, that's so fascinating. I want to know the name of that other book you were talking about too, about the person who transitioned and was talking about their experience in the
Yeah,
field of
I can
science.
send it your way.
Okay.
I know exactly where it's at on my shelf because I've looked at it multiple times. But yeah, it's it's interesting. But I tell people all the time, I'm so grateful for being part of the LGBT community, because I don't know how I would have turned out had I been a straight white male, because I was brought up in the right scenario to kind of have that mentality. But now, because I'm aware of all the types of things that can like cause trauma, like I reflect on that. I healed a lot of myself. But it's very interesting because if the world is built for you and it says here's step one, step two, step three, and as long as you follow it, like the world will accept you. If I'm not built for it, and most people I know aren't built for those exact steps because we're complex human beings, I feel like so many people who follow those steps and believe at the end happiness exists or completeness feels like it exists there, I feel like a lot of them are so angry because they're following all these steps and not finding anything positive at the end. Where they're watching a lot of us that are like, I'm going to just walk over here. I don't care about those steps. And they're seeing us enjoying life and finding happiness and finding calm in life. And I feel like it's probably a very toxic space for them to exist in, because they're like, I followed all the rules and I got nothing.
Yeah, that explains why there's so much hate towards people who do it differently. When the people say, "I don't want to live that way. I don't want to live society's way," even coaches wise, when you work for yourself, entrepreneurs of any kind, you do get a lot of criticism and hate. And you think realistically, get back on track. You need to go get a real job, come back down to earth, kind of stuff. And what you just made me think of too is that when you have that PTSD initiated by the disconnection between mind and body, you have that cognitive dissonance, which actually is part of the reason people like think in black and white, which is probably why they get so stuck in the steps. So I think that's another construct that derives from patriarch and religious like a culture that is that way. Because then when you have this black and white thinking from everyone having their PFC and their survival brain disconnected because things aren't logical, like my survival depends on me listening to this person, but this person also is saying things that don't make sense to me, so I have to disconnect listening to my PFC, my logical thinking mind, and just survive, right? And so then you have this black and white thinking and you follow everything that you're told to do, so you have to have the steps, you have to have the structure, or you're like, chaos, I don't know what to do, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, another thing people are faced with when they come out of religion is they're like, what do I do? No, seriously, like, what the fuck do I do? Excuse me, but they really are lost. And and that's why we have so many people fighting over what's right, because there is no thinking outside of the box. There's no thinking other than option one or two, which in coaching is like, hey, what about this third thing that could be true? We're always
Sit
trying
there
to,
flipping.
yeah, like, come on, what else is there? there's just so focused on the black and white, and so it really is stretching the brain, growing new neural pathways. And I think that's why I'm dedicated to this work, is because I'm like, hey, if we could all just grow some new my sorry, my daughter and I call her tree branches. I explain them to her like we're growing new tree branches.
Yeah.
um, if we could just all grow some more, we wouldn't have so much discomfort when people were different or had alternate ways of thinking.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the neuroscience is really important behind what I'm talking about, Christianity and patriarch.
Yeah, I it's interesting because for me, I'm one of those people who, when someone tells me like a way of doing something, I'm like, that's definitely a good way of doing something. And they're like, excuse me, it's the way. And I'm like, it's a way. And they get so offended. And then it becomes the sole focus of they need to prove to me that it's the only way. And I'm like, when it comes to life, like, it is so complex to believe that there's only one way to do something,
Mm-hmm.
you'll always lose that argument because there's never only one way to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of people that get so tight around those types of conversations, and I'm just like, I can tell you a couple different ways, and they're like, well, those ways probably down the road will fail. And I'm like, okay, it's whatever. If that's where you want to kind of sit, like, that's perfectly fine. But I'm telling you right now, you're telling me you're stuck.
Yeah.
So your way is not working. So I was offering you a possible other way. But if you want to keep standing at that wall and just hope that it's going to melt because God is going to open that rock for you, go for it. Like, that's fine. But I'm just saying, if you look over here, the path goes around the rock, and you could try that if you like. And I'm just like, it's interesting how sometimes people are so stuck on that. And I've tried to navigate around being very kind and flexible with my language to kind of tell them, like, I can understand, like, how your life has brought you to that conclusion, but other people's lives have brought them to other conclusions that are open for you to explore as well. Like, I'm not sitting there calling them like, you idiot. Like, I'm trying to softly guide them to the idea that there are more ways to try. don't
Absolutely.
don't beat yourself up because this way didn't work out. But sometimes it's just really hard for people to kind of navigate around being told that what they've been doing their whole life might not be the only way.
Yeah. And I feel like a broken record, but I'm like, and neurologically, that's again like their amygdala is literally like, whoop, that's something different. We didn't think of that. We weren't told that exists. God would have known that. So now we have to defend God. And so the prefrontal cortex literally just shrinks. And instead of being like, oh, let's explore new ways and think about new things that you're talking about, they contract, and they're literally like all the reasons why it won't work, and their reticulating activating system is like scanning to prove that that can't work. And so it's just like another fear-based um conditioned, like that they were conditioned to react that way. And that's I'm always like going back to the same thing, is like, but it's like it's crazy how many things, how many mindsets are affected by these teachings.
Yeah.
Like even the ability to see that there is more than one way to get around this rock. And
Yeah.
they're like, no, why not?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's why we still struggle with so many other prejudices as well in this world, because people are like, if I haven't personally experienced it, then it does not exist. And your reality that you are trying to get me to understand is false. You're trying to get me to understand false information. And even I, growing up, when it came to like racism, I struggled to hear my friends that were saying it still existed because I was sitting in a classroom of diverse people.
Mhm.
And I was like, no one's being mean to each other. We're all happy. Like, you're getting the same, like, stuff that I'm getting for crafts. Everything's, and because I didn't kind of see anything past my classroom, I couldn't hear what they were saying. And I kind of started realizing that as a privileged person, I had to start opening my ears and eyes to things that people were saying and accept realities that didn't like exist in my mind or in the small spaces that I've occupied in life. And when you start to kind of exist in those spaces, because I've moved around a lot and I had to kind of exist in spaces that were not normal to me,
Mhm.
which meant if I wanted to make friends, if I wanted to get to know people and be accepted, I needed to understand and start connecting with people in the way that they wanted to be connected with. Whereas I think a lot of people who live in a small town, grow up in a small town, never leave the small town, if the mentality is this is normal, then they don't have any reason to believe it's not. And when people come at them and say it's not normal, instead of like listening, they like buckle down and hold tight to their beliefs. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm so grateful that my life took me out, uprooted me, and put me in different places because I needed my eyes open so that I could understand that there's way more ways to live life than the way that I was brought up and taught to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw the same things, and I feel like I struggled to see that as well. And I did travel for a little bit, but I honestly did not see the extent of everything until COVID, until we were all trapped at home and we got access to people's real experiences through TikTok and started to actually find out what was going on other than what we thought was going on from the news. And I think that was such a, and I know I'm embarrassed to say that I made it that far in my life without knowing those things, but it's the truth. I really did not get, I mean, so many of the things now. There's, I don't know, I guess probably most of us, a lot of us who are here have just been shifting for the past 4 years, accepting and learning all this new knowledge. But yeah, it's really crazy how far you can get in your life with you want to care, you love the people around you, but you don't understand until
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah. And like I met so many really interesting people in my life, like tarot cards. I remember as a child thinking like those were like cards that demon worshippers used to like tell your future and tell you you're going to die in 7 days.
Yeah.
That was like my mindset I had. And then one of my friends was like, just let me do one for you. And they did a reading and it was so crazy accurate. And this person didn't know these were like inner thoughts that they were sharing. And I was sitting there, I was like, what is this? This is very interesting. And then as I started meeting more coaches, there was some that were a little bit more spiritual. There were some that were a little bit more faith-based. There were some that were more like career entrepreneurship focused. But when I started connecting, like there were a lot of things that I suppressed growing up where I had feelings and thoughts. And I've told people on my positive talk, sometimes the words that come out of my mouth, I'm like, wow, that wasn't even a thought first. It was almost like it just came out because it was meant to be in this space.
Mm.
So, like, the more I kind of exist in spaces where I'm allowed to expand and see more that could exist, I just opened my mind to, okay, what else is out there? Like, it's impossible for any human on this planet to have the full correct answer. So it's like, let's explore, let's keep
Mm.
seeing new things and just keep your mind open. There have been times where I'm sitting there like listening, I'm like, they sound crazy. But then I'm like, you know what? Let's stay open-minded and just keep listening because there have been things where they said it and I'm like, I've kind of had those feelings. I've had those thoughts. Interesting. But like as a child, those were like the devil trying to get in me. The
Mhm.
devil was
Mm.
and I'm like, so I shut anything off like that. Whereas like I used to have dreams about things and I was like shushed and told not to speak about it because the thought of other people knowing that I had a dream about something like that, it's just interesting how you're shushed so
Mhm.
much and like thinking if I had gotten to explore those things instead of feel shame around them or think that I'm bad because they existed in me, I wonder where I would be right now.
Yeah. Well, it's never too late to start exploring more.
Yeah.
And I agree. They really do shut down the expansive parts of spirituality that can really keep you in tune with yourself, your soul purpose, the things that will fulfill you the most. And it's sometimes really scary to get back in tune with those because you do think that it's the devil or a temptation. And, but it's so beautiful on the other side once you do get that back and once you can tap in again. And anyone can do it, which is my favorite thing. Is that clairvoyance. It's not like this thing people are born with that are chosen, or it's not just a one in a couple of people here and there. Every single person can has the capabilities to do that kind of work. um, and I heard a lot of clairvoyant people say that, and I was like, I'm calling BS. I'm gonna do this training, and I'm gonna prove you all wrong, I think, but is what I might have secretly thought. But I blew my own perception, and that became one of my favorite things to do. Now I'm like, yes, prove me wrong. Let's see what's out there. Show me how crazy and cool it can get.
Yeah.
So that's fun.
Yeah.
Makes life fun.
Exactly. And it's interesting because like I've had people who are like spiritual healers talk to me, and I will talk about like pains I'm having in my body, and they're like, try this. And I'm like, okay, how come medicine didn't do that, but like pinching a certain part of my body instantly got rid of a headache, but I'm being sold like 1,000 different pharmaceutical drugs to do this. And I was just like, okay, I think even now, because I live in a city where I used to live on a 1,200-acre farm, like most of my life was farm. And I noticed that I felt disconnected because when I lived on the farm, barefooted in the grass, I would be walking outside barefooted all the time. Since I've lived in the city, like I wear shoes everywhere outside. I don't want to touch the outside with my bare feet. But as soon as I went to the mountains or the beach or river or lake and took off my shoes and just like swam in the water and walked around in the mud, I was like, my stress is gone. Like my tension in my shoulders disappeared. I was just like, okay, I think there's a lot more to all of this than we're letting on. And I think people who live in the city need to take that time to like get out and connect and like put their feet in the dirt.
Oh, 100%. I agree with that. I know a couple of friends who are they have the coolest spiritual machines, and like they call it the spiritual underground railroad because it can't go mainstream because like the pharmaceutical companies would literally take it and charge $5 million for it or throw it away, or and like they have these machines that can detect every single ailment in your body, scans like from the top to the bottom. It can tell you where a cyst is, where the parasites are, every single thing. And she literally helps people cure cancer with it. But she was making a show on it because she already has a show on Amazon with her husband, and they were filming a show on this one. And then she was like, "I don't think I should." She was scared to even to have it go bigger than it is because of what the pharmaceutical companies would do. But I agree 100%. We are made of the earth. We are made with the earth, and we are taught to be separate from it and ourselves and the things that keep us feeling whole and aligned. So we really do have to like go out of our way to find connection and balance because it's not habitually ingrained in us anymore. It's been removed with colonization, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, the like corporate world wants to sell us stuff. And what best way to sell us stuff than tell us that we're incomplete
Mm-hmm.
and we're not whole and we don't have what it takes or what we need to complete or feel whole. And then they're like, hey, here, start buying all these products from us. Oh, this one makes you sick. Don't worry, we've got a medicine for that. Oh, that one makes this happen. Don't worry, we've got a medicine for that. And it's like they can sell you all this stuff. And even I like look back just 5 years from now, I was so obsessed with like what I thought purchasing certain things made me look like to other people. And it's so interesting to kind of navigate and go, oh, that's not that's not important. I brands started falling off of my shirts, and I'm like, you know what? That doesn't matter. We don't need that. It's a shirt. And then I start looking, and I'm like, that shirt looks exactly like the one over here. This one's 180. That one's $20. And I was like, oh, I can get it from Goodwill and recycle. And I just started like going through this like life where I realized I was so focused on, well, I don't want to buy the like discounted brand of this and someone see me walking around with that. And I was like, how tied up was I in the wrong things there? I was going broke trying to prove to someone that I was worth something. But it's like I was putting myself into debt trying to make people believe I was something that I could have been without any of those things in my pocket or on my body.
Yeah, there really is a yeah, the whole beauty, and I think I wrote a paper on it when I was finishing my master's about the beauty industry. It's like a $90 billion industry, and their whole tactic is making sure you feel incomplete and inferior to the women you're looking at on TV. And if you didn't, you wouldn't spend all the money on all the things that would change you. So it's really fascinating how psychology is used against us in all the big government, or not government, but all the big corporations, but not in government, education, or religion.
Yeah. I read a book called Scarcity Mindset, and I fell in love with it because I was like, how can we like use this in a positive way? Because it talked about like how slot machines use it, how other platforms are using something that's like our like bare minimum brain working, where it's like survive, survive, survive. And I was sitting there thinking, like, we don't really live in a world anymore, at least not here in the United States, where scarcity really exists. We definitely have more than we possibly could need. Like, thinking about what's around me in my apartment, I'm like, I don't need a lot of this. But I was sitting there thinking, like, how can you create and use people's like scarcity mindset to help them in a positive way? Because this book was like talking about all the things that people are using our scarcity brains for to get us to buy something
Mhm.
or get us to do things. And I was
So
like, there's got to be a way.
it's about the psychology of scarcity.
Yes,
I'm gonna write it down. I don't want to read this book.
it's amazing.
Scarcity mindset.
Yep.
Okay, sorry
Yeah.
I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. But he wrote another book before that one, and it was talking about being comfortable. I don't remember the title, but it was something about being comfortable. And I read that one first, and I was just like, he's really good at pointing out like the level of comfort we find, whether it's a healthy comfort or an unhealthy comfort that keeps us from growing. But when I read the scarcity mindset, I was just like, oh, this book. It's exact like he talked about like he took a trip to like Iran and was like looking at why drugs were starting to become such a big thing over there, and it was because they had like a lack of like stimulants in their life. So it was just like living in boredom caused them to like start doing drugs. And then they did like a test on pigeons where they put a pigeon in a small cage and gave them the choice of like normal food or stimulated drug type food. And in the small cage, the bird would choose the drug. But when they put them in a natural environment, the bird chose the regular food
Wow.
because it had space to live. And he was kind of comparing it to like how we live as humans. We live in such an unstimulated space now because before, like to do a research paper, you had to research, you had to go search for the books, you had to go to the library, you had to interview people. Whereas
Mhm.
now it's like, boop, okay, there's the information. We're starting to live in a world where nothing stimulates us, so we're finding stimulation in sugars and drugs and addictions to like porn or other things that if we lived a more like expansive life that stimulated us, those things wouldn't really show up in our lives. I was like, oh. Yeah, I could see that.
That's fascinating. I really want to read that book. It's funny
Yeah.
because you're talking about things, and I'm sitting here in my maximalist office. I'm like, I don't know what that says about me, but it's just funny because when I was first started my spiritual journey and I was a yogi, like I identified very much as a spiritual Christian yogi, and
Mhm.
so everything to me was slim simplicity. Sorry, my mouth was not against me. And so I didn't wear makeup. I was like thrifting yoga clothes. I was so simple. I was like against buying anything. And then I went into this really deep subconscious healing of discovering what I liked and what I really had a obsession with, or just a love for, not even obsession. And I realized like I really loved like dark academia style, right? And so then I went through this phase of like inner teen healing when she was really poor as a teenager and really depressed. And so I had this fun little few months of thrifting everything in my office, pretty much. I mean, like people are like, how much money did you spend on that wall? I'm like, well, that was $25. I printed that out myself, and I'm just like, I have so much fun finding these fun, funky things. So I don't know if what that means psychologically, but I have fun finding thrift deals that are like my style, that are like dark and funky.
Yeah.
But maybe that's
I mean, I
my
love
stim.
that you like found cheaper stuff and got creative because like that's you doing stuff. Whereas like now you could literally just hit buy on Amazon
Oh
and
yeah.
then be like, oh, hang, buy the next thing, hang. Like being creative, I think is great. I started realizing that because I used to drive a lot, like hours and hours, and I would fly all over the place. That I would listen to podcasts, I would listen to music. When I started working from home and stopped traveling altogether, I realized I hadn't listened to music in forever.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And it took one of my friends who's like a spiritual coach. She's like, I think music is like your way of like connecting to things.
Mm.
And I was like, ooh, I definitely, because when I think of songs, I tell people like if you need a love song, think of a love song that you used to sing to someone else or think of someone else, but then sing it to yourself instead.
Mm.
And I took like Sarah Evans, I Could Not Ask for More, because as a kid that was like my cousin's wedding song. So I kind of like attached that song to like this is what it means to be in love with someone. And then like
Oh, I love that.
I sat in the bathroom and just looked in the mirror and listened to the words and like sang it to myself. And I was just like, this is powerful because I'm sitting here saying I could not ask for more than this time together. And it's like, I could not ask for more than this time that I get to spend with just me. And I was like, this whole song has a new meaning now. Now I cry when I hear it all over again.
I love that. I can't remember what song I did that with recently, but it was one that was real popular, and my daughter wanted to listen to it, and I could just not resonate with it until I flipped the meaning as if I was talking to myself, and I was like, oh, "That's some good stuff." So I love that practice though, especially as a suggestion.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I have to go listen to that song too. The Could Not Ask for More. I haven't heard that in so long.
Oh, it's so powerful when you sing it to yourself. You'll never listen to it again and think it's for someone else.
Oh,
It's just like,
okay, I'm
this
gonna
is
do
my song for me. Like,
it.
this is not for you. You don't get to be a part of this
Someone
song.
walks in. Oh, I love you too. No, this is me time.
Singing to myself.
Yeah.
Well, I see that we got to the end of the hour, so I wanted to just say thank you so much for coming on here and having this conversation. I really enjoyed the way our conversation just kind of flowed, but I wanted to give you an opportunity as well to let anyone know how they might be able to work with you or if there's anything that you're currently working on that you would like to promote.
Yeah. So, well, first off, thank you for having me. I had a great time as well. This was really fun. I'm so glad we got to make it happen. Um, yeah, I do have a one-on-one coaching program. It's 8 weeks of 1 hour, 1 to 1.5, depending on how we're doing that week, where we will focus on figuring out where they're at versus where they want to be with identity and beliefs. And just by identity, it just means that whatever you're stuck stuck from to your ideal. And a lot of times that is based from your Christian religious trauma. So that's where I kind of come in, and I do have a background in both the intellectual side, so we can talk about psychology and the neuroscience and then the physiology of what Christianity does to the mind and body. So you can analytically be learning. And then at the same time, we'll be exploring the belief systems on a somatic level so we can rewrite them. And then you can have both of those foundations to reestablish who you are, where you're at, where you want to be, and get there with all the tools that I have accumulated throughout my journey. So that is open, and I am so excited to share that with people. It's heart, my heart passion.
I love it. And honestly, I feel like so many people need that. Even the ones who don't even know they need it, they need it. So I'm glad that someone like you's out there doing that type of work. And I'm just excited that we got to connect. And if there's ever anything that you can think of that I can help you with, let me know. I would love to continue partnering with you in any way to like boost that into more people's atmospheres of awareness. But I just want to say thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.
Absolutely. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.